All right, if everyone is ready, we'll begin our work session. Give us just a minute. We have a member who's joining us remotely, and we want to make sure we've got that set up and running. All right, my login's not working. I'll have to go in as a guest.
Different client, don't we?
I'm here.
All right, excellent. So Ms. Mahaffey is joining us remotely. I want to make sure that I can pull this up to see any questions that come in over chat. Let's see. All I need is the confirmation note that I've joined the meeting. Now all I need are my glasses so I can read the confirmation note that I've joined the meeting. And we're ready to begin. Good afternoon, everyone. All right, so today we are here. This is our Board of Education work session for December 19th. Starting just a minute or two behind our 3:30 start time. And our main subject we have two subjects for today. Our first one is the discussion of the School Resource Officer Memorandum of Understanding. And so I see we have Dr. Robinson here, Mario O'Keefe, Kendrick Scott, and I'm sorry, Juan Cortez. It's nice to meet you, Mr. Cortez. And so I have Mr. Scott is driving our presentation today. Is it Mr. Scott or Dr. Robinson?
I'm going to do the introduction.
All right. Then I will hand it off to you, Dr. Robinson.
Appreciate it, sir. Chair Haggerty, Vice Chair Waters, today you will receive, and esteemed board members. Today you receive a presentation from Mr. Scott about our School Resource Officer Program and the Memorandum of Understanding that outlines the goals and guiding principles as agreed to by and between the board and the agencies in order to foster a more effective relationship between schools and law enforcement, using officers specifically trained to respond to the unique needs arising within the school setting. After the presentation, we will ask the board to ask clarifying questions and to share comments and considerations. Also joining us at the table, as Chair Haggerty shared, is Attorney Mario O'Keefe, who advised the board during the 2020-2021 renegotiation of the SRO MOU. And as you guys have met Juan Cortez, who is the Director of Special Operations. One thing for the viewing public, our SRO MOU is a 72-page document that can be found on our website. And just for the board, I have a couple of copies up here. If anyone needs a hard copy of the SRO MOU, I have it for you here as well. So at this time, I will now turn it over to Mr. Scott, who will drive the presentation.
Thanks, sir. And looking to Ms. Crane, Dr. Crane, see if she's ready.
Are we good to go, Dr. Crane? And thank you, ma'am.
All right. So we'll move forward one slide. Yep, thank you. All right, so I'm going to provide you today with a historical overview of the MOU. I'm also going to talk about some MOU highlights that's in the current document, and we'll look towards our next steps towards a new MOU. And then we'll allow for any questions and dialogue that you may have at the end. So the MOU was first drafted in 2007-2009 school year to create a common agreement with all 11 law enforcement agencies. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I forgot my mic. My bad. First drafted in 2007 to 2009, created a common agreement with all 11 law enforcement agencies to provide SROs to the district. It aimed to achieve a consistency in operations across the district. Just to give you an example of that, it set forth qualifications as well as a specialized school and CIT training that all SROs now currently have. It included 5 additions, the most recent one being signed July 1 of 2021. All those different additions have different length times and substantive changes that were made throughout the course of the MOU lifespan. Some current highlights of our current MOU. Expands the SRO guidance session and the SRO summit. This year, the SRO Coalition, which is a group of SRO supervisors from the SRO program, have decided they would like to host and organize our SRO guidance session for the first time this year, so we're very excited about that, and we will continue to do our SRO summit. The current MOU also clearly defines the SRO roles and responsibilities. This also created language around how school administration, not the SRO, will handle school discipline. That allows the school administration to concentrate on that board policy versus getting involved in any criminal matters. And that relationship, it also defines how it's going to work when they do have an overlap. It better outlines law enforcement actions and safety interventions, which provides a detailed guidance on the scope of SRO involvement in matters at the school. Just a few more things that the current MOU provides: guidelines for principals as to when it's appropriate to use their SRO, which is also covered in our SRO summit. It explains part of the WCPSS Code of Student Conduct, which was an important addition that we added in the most recent edition of the MOU to help differentiate between criminal law and board policy and student discipline, and it helped educate those SROs in that matter. So our next steps for new MOU development, it will begin on July 1st, 2024. It will involve the same agencies as the current MOU, so we'll be looking for a sense of general direction from the board as to where we will be going with the new MOU. It will require your input, and it will also have a negotiation process that has started already with Darrington Smith, which Ms. O'Keefe has been wonderful enough to help us with. And our primary input there's some preliminary input from law enforcement that I've already been out and sought, and for that part, I will let you know they haven't sought any big substantive changes in the document at this point. And with that, we'd like to open it up for some questions and dialogue at this time.
All right, questions, dialogue. Let's start with Ms. Edmonds.
Thank you. Mr. Scott, I missed, who did you say is helping this year with the session in the summit, the guidance session in the summit? I thought you said somebody new is helping, or I missed what you said.
Okay, so we do 2 training sessions for the SROs. There's one that happens in January, which is called the SRO guidance session. That is a law enforcement only group. And then we do what's called the SRO Summit. That happens in August, and that is all of the SROs along with their principal or school administrators that they serve. So the one that's happening in January, the guidance session, the SRO Coalition, which we've had running now for a little over a year, are all the supervisors of the SRO units. They've asked if they can participate more in creating what they do for their own training. So they're still collaborating with us. We're just trying to let them drive a little bit more of it since it's only a law enforcement function.
All right. Are there any further questions for Mr. Scott? All right. Well, all right. Ms. Johnson-Hosley.
I'm not sure if it's for you. You all can tell me. I'm laughing because Maura's like, oh, Ms. Johnson, Hostler. We had so many conversations. You were I should say thank you very much for taking all of my calls while you were transitioning from maternity leave on this MOU. I'm curious, so thank you, Mr. Scott, for saying you haven't got any substantial changes. I am curious about how, and I would assume this is anecdotal at this point, on the changes and how they're being implemented, any kind of anecdotal feedback, mostly from inside the building, from mostly APs, but I'll say administrators in general, in terms of some of the changes we made, especially the ones that were a little bit different around moving the culture so that principals and APs also were making the distinction between disciplinary action and crimes. So any anecdotal feedback on those changes we made, how it might be playing out in the buildings?
So what I would offer is that when we do the summit, I try to make a point while I have both groups in the building at that time to kind of walk around and get the temperature of them. You know, I go out into the field quite a bit and ask and see how the things are working. I would tell you that definitely the defining of the roles this time was much better around, and I think that that has helped tremendously, because a lot of times whenever there is a question, if you will, I always hear either the SRO or the school administrator saying, well, you know, the MOU defines how, and so.
Oh, that has come a long way.
Yeah, it's come a very,
Seymour,
I would
it's
say
worth-
that was one part of the better things that came out of the last one. And also clearly defining whenever there's any type of discrepancy where we need to intervene and talk with an administrator and an SRO about how the relationship works. Since it's clearly defined now in here, we know exactly what that needs to look
Right.
like when that arises. And luckily, it doesn't happen often, but before we didn't have that component. So it was kind of inconsistent in how we did that, but now it's a clear direction. And MOU has been doing what it's supposed to do. It's define the relationship and how each party works, and that's a good thing.
Thank you. And then the follow-up to that is the exact same, but for our law enforcement agencies' leadership, have they given any feedback on or thoughts about how it's actually happening or rolling out with all the changes we made?
So what I did once I got into this role is I met with just about every chief and the sheriff, met with a couple majors, but I went to meet with all senior leadership of all 11 agencies and asked
Thank
them,
you.
was there any substantive changes, problems with the MOU, or things that you weren't looking, zero. So
Wow.
I feel like it is, if I were to, you know, it feels like it's working.
Okay. I mean, that's really good feedback. Sorry, Mr. Chair, last question. So one of the things that the only thing actually substantive that I've gotten feedback on post the full discussion we had before we signed this MOU is still some concerns about there being discrepancies around when a student has to be taken into custody by the SRO and when the call is happening to parents. That I would say is the only thing that I've gotten multiple still concerns from. Of course, this is from the parent side of things, is that that's still not happening in the ways that we articulate it, which is there shouldn't be a large gap of time. Well, we went, you all can remember, but for our new folks, we went back and forth around language that it's hard to say when is prompt, when is immediate. But that's, I would say, the only thing that I'm still getting not a little. I would say that's the biggest complaint I got. And of course, when it showed up in Sibley, then I got those calls to remind me that that is still the one concern, is the promptness of follow-up from the school to the families if a student has to be taken into custody for a crime, of course.
And so just so I'm clear, that's revolving mostly around the speed of when that's happening, how soon after it's happened.
Well, so here's the issue. Yes, it's the speed, but also I had two particular ones where the parent wasn't called till they were called that the kid was in custody, and it wasn't by our administrator. So the parent found out before the administrator or anyone from the school called the parent. But I only had two of those, which were
Okay.
a
That's
little bit
good,
more
that's good
egregious.
feedback.
So.
And we'll go to other questions, but I just want to follow up with Ms. Johnson-Hostler. For specifically those concerns, did it sound to you like that was something, was it a school responsibility, or was it a communication between the LEA and the school?
It's a school responsibility. Sorry. So that was one of my, I should probably let Maura talk about this, because this was a hard one for me, because I wanted us to define, which I get, you can't say, please call the parent within 30 minutes. But this was hard for me to let go of, because this was one of the largest complaints that I've consistently gotten, is the lack of immediate response to the parent that their child has been taken into custody. And I agree that is hard for me if a kid is being arrested and a parent does not immediately know. So it is been consistent. I will say I've gotten fewer of those calls. That's why I asked the calls and the questions in the sequence, because I do think hearing you say the roles and responsibilities being defined has been helpful to probably eliminate some of that. But it is still, I would say, the biggest ongoing concern I have. So I would say, yes, it is on the school to make that decision, because the school is very aware when a kid is taken into custody.
Okay,
So.
thank you.
And of course, parents want to hear from the school because that is where they sent their child, not the LEA. But thanks for the clarification.
I appreciate that. All right, other questions? I saw Ms. Caulfield.
Thank you. The code of conduct that you had mentioned, is that the same throughout every school?
As far as the disciplinary policies, is that what you're asking?
The specific code of conduct?
Yes.
From Wake County, is it a Wake County policy that is repeated in every school exactly the same?
That's exactly.
Okay. And then my other question is, for those that are listening, can we define the role of what the SRO is? There is a lot of confusion with public, with social media. People come back and forth to us all the time. And I think the confusion is what they're allowed to do and what their role is. So can we clarify that?
So I can try and generalize so first and foremost, they're a law enforcement officer. So they work for the agency, whatever municipality they're in, or the sheriff's office. Their primary roles for safety and security of the school. They're not there to engage in any disciplinary policies or disciplinary practices of the school administration. When you're asking what they can and cannot do, they're there to enforce, I guess you would say, general statute law. It would be the best way I could describe it. And they are there to build relationships with our students. That's one of the primary things that we push them to do.
Thank you. And thank you for mentioning that, because every school that I visit, or the ones that I do know the SROs, that is kind of like, I'm not going to say their number one goal, but it is when it comes to the students. And I think that is definitely misinterpreted from, the public, especially the social media, and when some of the news articles go out, especially when somebody's alarmed, the first thing they ask is, what about the SRO? So they do really want to have those relationships with the students, and I think that's very important. It's not just there to get them in trouble. It's just there to keep everything safe for our families. But I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Mrs.
And also,
Caulfield.
can I get a copy of that?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Mrs. Caulfield, I just want to add that the nature of what SROs do has changed over the past 30 years. I know that many people may have the thought of what SROs did back in the 90s, and I certainly remember what they were. They were that strong arm, if you will, for administration. But SROs and school districts and DPF work very hard to clearly define what that role is. And what I've seen over the past 15 years is that there's been a clear delineation that they are not that extra administrator at the school, that when it comes to doing student discipline and investigations and things of that nature, they stay completely out of that. They serve a support role if necessary, but we will certainly make sure that we do even more to share with our public the role of the SRO and what they do, but it is vastly different than it was back in the 90s from what it is now.
And, Dr. Taylor, it may be that at one of our safety and security meetings, maybe we could bring in any SRO willing to talk about their day, let staff talk about it, because, again, we do get a lot of misunderstanding up and down about what their roles are and what their responsibilities are. So it could be a good, yeah.
And if I could just follow up, I appreciate what you added. I think it's important for our families to understand that, needing a mentor for these kids is also something that is very important, and, we see that all the time. And I think it's important for them to have that relationship in the school so that they can see that as help as well, something that could be there to help and guide them as well. So just want to leave them in a very good light.
All right. So, Mr. Scott, it looked like you were going to get off without any questions, but now I'm seeing a lot of questions pop up around the table, so
That's fine.
we're going to go to Mr. Swanson
That's what we're here
next.
for.
Thank you all. And mine is just very similar along the lines of Ms. Coffel's question, or rather, but our school resource officers are not the disciplinarians in those school buildings, correct?
No, correct.
That's just a point that I think we have to make sure that we're doing a good job of amplifying, because every school is different, and I know that is the role of the principals and administration, and our SRO officers are not trained to discipline students the way our principals and other staff is. So I think that's just a point that I wanted to elevate in this moment, so folks, as we're talking about the duties and the roles, so we're not putting more on school resource officers that is not in their job description and causing additional harm to students in these buildings. So that's the piece I just wanted to raise, so thank you.
Thank
I
you,
would
Mr.
just-
Swanson.
I would add that it's very clear in this document that is very clear to them. And they're trained and read or recites parts of this document when they come to the school, so they know school discipline is not their role.
Thank you. Vice Chair Waters.
Thank you, and thank you for this update. As I was sitting here and looking over at the Office of Equity Affairs represented here, I would be remiss if I didn't ask about any of the work that their team may be involved in some of the training with the summit. What does that look like as you apply an equity lens, particularly as we hear across the country that there are often disparities in outcomes when it relates to African American children and SROs. So can you speak to that?
Absolutely, ma'am. So I would say that years ago, quote me on the number of years ago, we started to bring Dr. Chavis in to talk with our SROs at the guidance session, which is, remember, that's the session is law enforcement only. Then we started bringing students into the mix as well, and we've had every year, at least I know for the last 5 years or so, some equity component in training, and almost at least the last 4 or 5 of those sessions have always had students leading that and doing that in front of not only the SROs, but we've done it at the SRO Summit, where we have your school administrators and the SROs sitting side by side being taught by the equity teams at several of the schools. And we make sure that's a component in every one of these summit sessions that we do.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I have Mr. Hershey and then Dr. Ng.
Thank you. Have any agencies expressed concerns about staffing levels? If that's something that you can answer now, or you would rather not?
I would answer that with saying that there's a nationwide staffing shortages with law enforcement, and we're not immune to that.
Okay. If a SRO is out from a school and they have a replacement, are they equally trained, go through the same training, and how deep does that go if, the flu goes around?
Typically, for the most part, the SRO supervisors are who dips in whenever one of their folks are out, so that someone that's familiar with our schools. Some agencies have backup or fill-in SROs that they send to the SRO school. They send them to the CIT training, and then they typically work as a community police officer, and then they're the first people that they pull in to fill in for, like, someone's out sick or has to go to court or those types of things. But I have not seen widespread ever is that they just grab a officer from the street and say, okay, go work in the schools. That's not what they do.
Do we define that in here, that saying that we would like them not to do that? We do define that?
Yeah.
Okay, you can jump in and.
Sure. So yeah, there's several sections of the SRO MOU that talk about qualifications and training requirements for SROs, and also some language around identification of a backup SRO.
Okay.
We can certainly come back with more information about kind of whether that's worked, whether folks have input from the agency perspective on that. But that's
I would just be interested if we had any additional issues when an SRO has been out sick, if that increases the number of complaints or anything. It may not at all, but
Sure.
I'm just curious. That's all I have for right now. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hershey. Dr. Ng.
Hi. Just wanted to kind of piggyback with Ms. Johnson-Hostler, the comment about the timely communication. I think, from my medicine work, when something bad happens, there is a clear chain of command, like a command center in a way to kind of talk about what to do and how to communicate things, especially with family members. And so I think part of this MOU, we should be clear about, who does what and how to make that timely communication to family members. I think that would be very important.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Ng. All right. If there's no follow-ups, what I'll do, a couple of things. We heard some specific questions around the notification. And so if I could ask Mr. Scott or Ms. O'Keefe to come back with us, let us know what language in the MOU addresses that, if there's additional language that's needed, or if it's something that we need to do internally as a school policy or school rules and procedure to help address that and improve that.
Absolutely.
And then what I'd like to do is just ask our board members, as we go forward, we will schedule a Safety and Security Committee meeting. And if you have specific questions about the SRO program, please send them to me, and please copy Mr. Scott and Dr. Taylor. And then we can put together maybe a more in-depth program on some of these specific things about the roles, responsibilities, some of the additional training that goes on, and help develop that out a little more, if you all would be willing to do that. And then finally, I'll just say to Ms. Johnson-Hostler and Ms. Mahaffey listening, after all of the months of work and community engagement and how long it took us to get to this process and the resistance we ran into holding out to getting a lot of these improvements, I'm glad to hear you say that this is something that seems to be working well for our schools, that even those law enforcement agencies that initially were resistant to some of the changes have come to endorse and embrace. And I just think that's a job well done. So, this has my blessing, but again, let's hear from everybody, and we'll move forward from there. All right?
Excellent.
Okay, thank you all. We'll give a moment for transition, and then we'll turn to our next agenda item on our work session agenda for today, our Supplier Diversity and Inclusion presentation. You might remember this is a discussion that originally arose out of our policy committee meetings, and as the school system looked at our purchasing policies and how we would try to promote more equality and diversity in the business opportunities afforded around the district. So today we'll have our Assistant Superintendent of Equity Affairs, Dr. Will Chavis, and I see you are joined by our staff of Pam Gales and Sean Birch-Crispin. And I don't know if there's anyone else presenting today, but that's who I have on my list. And Dr. Chavis will give you a minute to get settled, but whenever you're ready, kick us off.
Good afternoon, Chair Haggerty, Vice Chair Waters, board members, and Superintendent Taylor. We are happy to be in front of you today to give you some insight, update, and information as to our Supplier Diversity and Inclusion Program, which functions out of the Office of Equity Affairs. I wanted to also mention before we get started that we have communicated with the board that our intent is to come before you and to provide you and the general public information about the work streams happening in the Office of Equity Affairs so that you are equipped with that information and that you can be a partner in this work alongside of us as we realize Policy 1150 and we take active steps to realize and center our work of the strategic plan and the equity framework. So today we are going to talk a little bit and unpack the 2021 assessment that was conducted to give you an update as to where we are with all things of our historically underutilized business program and our Supplier Diversity and Inclusion program. So we do have some updates for you today. The work and what lies in front of us with this presentation and the work streams associated with our work continues to be an intersection of policy as well as general statutes. I want to make that very clear that our work here today is connected to those things, right? We have at least 2 board policies that we know are integrated into this work as well as general statutes. So we're going to share lots of information with you today. I am joined today, I must say, by the 2 experts in this room as it relates to this work. Pam Gales, who is our Director of Supplier Diversity and Inclusion, and Sean Birch Crispin, who is our Senior Administrator for Historically Underutilized Business Programs. So if we can go ahead and cue the presentation. All right, and if we'll go to the next slide. The next few slides that you'll see contain our equity policy as well as our strategic plan and our equity framework that we won't go into great detail on. If we'll go ahead and advance the slide, go ahead again, and one more time. Wanted to give you the roadmap to our presentation today, so we'll take some time to give you the historical and the background, the context, if you will, of supplier diversity and inclusion. Involved in this process is a lot of community outreach and efforts. So Pam and Sean will talk through that. It's important that you have some data and know where we stand currently and where we're headed. So we're going to share some relevant data. You'll have in your, if you have the copy of the presentation, you'll see that we have some alignment to our current equity-focused practices. So you'll get a chance to see the connection there. And with all things, we want to talk about our next steps, where we are and where we're headed to, and being a world-class organization or entity. It's important that as we think about equity, we're promoting equity not just within the confines of our school, but we're engaging in equity through our partnerships and our community, those that work with us with vendors and our business practices. So you'll hear about the importance of that throughout today's presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Ms. Pam Gales.
Okay. Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Okay. So I looked at this. So today I want to talk about our desired outcomes. Our desired outcomes for the Supplier Diversity and Inclusion Program are to ensure that the program supports the Equity Policy 1150 and 1150 Section C in particular in the policy. It promotes racial and gender equity in business practices and in the diversification of school system vendors and suppliers in accordance with the law and district policy. That's one. The other thing is the hub participation policy, which I know some of you are familiar with, that we passed a year or so ago. And then our alignment with the strategic plan. So all of that encompasses what we see as an effective supplier diversity program. Also, improvements in the process and visibility and the program management, meaning staffing, to achieve the benchmark performance levels. Because in order to do that, we're going to have, the proper resources to be able to do that and to be able to move forward to have a better supplier diversity program. And then some of the areas of improvement and action steps for change will be hopefully our outcome today. Next slide. Oh, she's already on. Okay, I would just like to give a little bit of the historical background on supplier diversity programs, because I don't know how many of you are familiar with North Carolina and where it started and the laws and things, because, not to age myself, but I started, with the supplier diversity back in the late 80s, early 90s, and the programs have really changed over time. The law has been in place for a long time, but the purpose of the programs is to dismantle barriers and minimize opportunities for diverse businesses in government and construction and contracting. So in procurement and construction and contracting. But over the years, a lot of positions such as mine and Ms. Birch Crispin have been elevated to the point where it's in not only government entities, but also in, I would say, corporate also. A lot of them are, having positions such as ours. But in the government in North Carolina, we have been in place in entities, but not elevated to the point where people were seeing that work that we were doing within the entity. So I think over the past few years, that has happened, and I think a lot of that change has been good for our programs. But Wake County Public Schools Supplier Diversity Program's purpose is to engage diverse businesses in overall acquisition of goods, services, products, construction, and programs that support our district. The Supplier Diversity Program is composed of these three policies, to provide steps to enhance the program and provide process standards. The North Carolina General Statute 143-128.2 is the historically underutilized business policy. That is centered around a lot of our work. Our equity policy, of course, 1150, and then the participation policy, 6402, that was approved. Next slide. So our current state of supplier diversity, I think we're in a good space right now with the supplier diversity program. Since the assessment of the program in 2021, a lot of changes have been made. Of course, the transition of course, Dr. Chavis coming on board, hitting the ground running and getting things rolled out for us. He has been there and been very supportive. And also working with the purchasing department, working with facilities design and construction. So we have all been intertwined in some way over the past 2 years to be able to get the work moving and advance from the assessment. The assessment was very integral in giving me a roadmap to be able to do some of the things to move forward in the program. So purchasing has created an internal vendor database, which is great. We're communicating the strategic value of our supply diversity program to all the staff. This year, Sean, Ms. Birch-Crispin, and I presented to the principals. We were able to present to the principals, and they were very, excited about the things that we, brought to them about how they can reach out to vendors under a certain dollar amount because, they know that they can go out and purchase from these small vendors under that certain dollar amount. So they were very excited about that. And we're out building partnerships with diverse vendors and suppliers. I have an open door policy. Anybody can call me, anybody can talk to me. Same thing with Sean. We both are very open to the vendors contacting us. A lot of times they're surprised and, oh, you answered the phone, because they don't get that very often. They get the voicemail and then maybe get a call back. So that's been good for us. And then communicating our supplier diversity goals to the departments with our processes and expectations for contractors also. And we implemented, this is my favorite part, a supplier diversity staff within the Office of Equity Affairs, which was Ms. Birch-Crispin being hired. So that worked out well for us. Next areas you see here, which is marketing, outreach, technical assistance, utilization, and compliance. Marketing, of course, is us getting out there into the community and doing trade shows, doing outreaches. Our website is going to get updated, I know very soon. I know that's being talked about. And us doing community events. We're always out doing community events. Our outreach is that we attend pre-bid conferences also. We attend all the pre-bid conferences. We make sure that we're letting the contractors on our building projects know that, we are here, you have opportunities here, and these are the ways you can contact us and reach out to us. Under utilization, we try to make sure that we're giving equal opportunity to participate in every aspect of contracting. I just call it diversity in contracting because it's across the board. It's not just construction. It's on every contract that we do here. We should have that equity lens and think about the diverse suppliers that could be doing the work here at Wake County Public Schools. And of course, compliance is mainly on the construction side, but we are you know, going to try to work to see, because now we don't have a specific goal on procurement, and we're doing a good faith effort, but we're going to work with procurement to try to find a way to even see how we can make sure that we're keeping up with that, to make sure that the good faith efforts are at least being done on the procurement side. But on the construction side, we definitely have to report, as you'll see later on in the presentation, the report that goes to the county and how they compile the numbers there, and that we're complying with NC General Statute 143-128.2. Next slide. Yeah. And I'm going to transition over to Ms. Pritchett.
I'm sorry, one question. Will you take questions during the presentation, or will you have questions toward the end?
Sure, we can take questions during the presentation.
Just really quickly, if we could go back to the last slide. So I wanted to ask you about compliance.
Yes.
Because there's our compliance as an organization that does the contracting and the hiring. But one of the things that we've talked about before, and if I'm jumping ahead, just tell me and I'll back down.
Okay.
But I know that we've had several vendors that have been interested in being identified with, under the MWBE status. But sometimes, for example, like the state database is very cumbersome for some vendors. When I'd seen compliance up there about made by the contractor, I'd interpreted that to mean, do we work with the contractors who might not be in the database, but who appear to us to meet those qualifications? Do we do any work on that front?
Yes, we do. We work with contract, because on the construction side, and sometimes this is misunderstood, because the construction side has a lot of minority and women businesses that work on our projects, but they are not in our system because they're working for the higher contractor, which is the CM at risk. So it makes it difficult for them to be in our database for them to reach out to us, but we keep a list of them. So if anybody would contact us to say, hey, I need a plumber, I need this, then we do send them that information. But because we do a lot of CM at risk projects, the only one that would be in our database would be that CM at risk that we pay. So all the contractors, 20, 30, maybe 40 contractors that work under them are not.
I appreciate that. And that might be something for a deeper dive later, but I appreciate you clarifying that for me. Thanks. Looks like we may have some more questions. I'm sorry if I broke your momentum.
That's fine.
Let's start with Ms. Caulfield and then Vice Chair Waters.
Sorry, just a technical question. You said CM at risk?
Yes.
Is that a term, and can you explain it?
That is a construction manager at risk. And maybe Mr. Malone can explain what that is.
So the bulk of your construction contracts for your larger projects, elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, and major renovations, instead of bidding the traditional single prime method, you historically have been using construction management at risk as your vehicle for that. In that situation, you select a construction manager based on qualifications. Staff will bring those to you. You get those resolutions at times where you approve several projects to use that method. And then the construction manager under the statute is required to pre-qualify all subcontractors, and that's where they reach out to not only the minority contractors, but all contractors in the area. And what people find about CM at risk, and you may want to speak to this, is that you tend to have a higher minority business participation on CM at risk contracts because of the time that's involved in the bidding and the efforts that people like, Pamela require CMs to put forth in soliciting those subcontractors.
That's absolutely correct.
All right. Ms. Caulfield, did that answer your question? All right. Vice Chair Waters.
Thank you for this update. I was just wondering, I know there have been conversations in the past about like a high concentration of representation in service, certain areas like service providers, but a lower representation in some of the other areas. What does that look like in terms of your goal setting or data as you try to close the gap and make more opportunities available in some of the areas where we don't see as many women and minority-owned businesses are represented?
Well, we have the Raleigh Business Expo that we do every year where anyone can come and meet the departments. We invite all of the internal departments out to come. Procurement is there. They're always there, and they're giving out information of how to become, a vendor with Wake County Public Schools. So that's always happening. We also go to outreaches that are just for goods and services type of vendors, so they know that that is available. So all of this is being done behind the scene. We're out in the community. We're out talking to all the vendors. It doesn't matter whether you do goods, services, or construction. We do state construction, which Sean will talk to and, talk about that, all the things we do in a few minutes. But I think the disconnect is that they don't know how to. And so those are the things we're going to have to do more. And now that we're getting, more staff and able to grow a little bit, I can be, and Sean can be, and this, our staff can be in different places at different times and able to go out and teach about how to do business with Wake County Public Schools and how to get those contracts or contract opportunities that are available here, because I think it's just that they don't know. I just don't want to tell them, go to the website and see, or go out on IPS, on the IPS site and look, because it has to be some personal touch to it, because they don't know. So that's the only way we're going to be able to expand and, like I said, get to the point where we can be more inclusive to the vendors that are not common, like the food trucks and things like that, that people say, caterers and different people like that just don't know, but they're Hub certified, right? And they would like to have an opportunity, also, but they just don't know how to navigate the system.
Ms. Waters, I think to add to that, I know you were asking about how do we close the gaps where we have underrepresentation in some places and not so much in others. As we end out today's presentation, our next steps, and I mentioned this earlier about becoming a world-class entity within the work of supplier diversity and inclusion. It's about how are we tracking our data, right? Mm-hmm. Where do we have areas that serve as models, but where are there areas that we need to address and support and provide ongoing what that looks like from our office to those particular pockets throughout our district. Pam or Ms. Gales had talked about earlier getting in front of principals. I think that was the first time that had happened, right? And now reaching out to assistant principals so that we are socializing these policies and the work that's happening within a department or entity of two people, right? And how we can advance that work. But I think the next level order for this is to continue to look at data beyond the metrics of what's in the general statute and policies, but then to identify where we need to concentrate or put some more concentrated effort into so that we can have a level of high demand and impact across our district.
And I'll speak to that, how we can do that a little further in the presentation.
Well, thank you, Dr. Chavis and Ms. Gales. I love your passion for this work. I can see your excitement when you talk about it, and so I'm really glad that you're leading this work.
All right, thank you, everybody. Director Gales, I know that you have a lot of community outreach and engagement work that you do.
Yes.
I think that might be the next slide up, if you'd like to tell us about some of that.
So we'll cue that. All right, so
For example, I know that, here we go. We have a long list of great opportunities that y'all are involved in.
absolutely. So good afternoon, and I'm going to share with you, as you can see here, there's quite a few community engagement and outreach that we do as a program. So I definitely don't want to try to read all of those, but I do want to let you know that we are heavily involved in the community, and I think this is where it will definitely take on those areas and those vendors and those suppliers that we are lacking in certain areas. Through this engagement is how we inform those businesses that they're needed. And here's the opportunities. So again, we are constantly engaging in outreach. We spend quite a bit of time in outreach. I think as Ms. Gales and I we work constantly, even on the weekends, even when we are in stores and we see small businesses or people with small businesses, and I'm constantly asking, what do you do? I see that you have a trucking business and so forth. So we're constantly engaging the community and informing the community of how we work and what we have, the opportunities we have here at Wake County Public School Systems. So I do want to make sure that out of all of the many that are listed, and all of them are not, but the many that are listed, we are really focused regularly in the North Carolina Minority Women and Business Enterprises Coordinators Network, which is a pretty large network, and that we have annual meetings and we have quarterly meetings, we have teachings, we have best practices, we inform the minority firms and small businesses of getting them prepared and ready to work on state and local contracts. So we do quite a bit of that in that organization, as well as the Supplier Diversity Alliance Practitioners Alliance, which focuses really on supplier diversity and supplier diversity spend and goods and services, and what is it that we can do and what is it that we're doing that we can either improve on, engage in, or implement in our program. So it is a constant engagement and learning process with us, with other entities and other entities, and understanding what they do and how we can implement that in our program. And lastly, not final, but lastly, which I would like to talk a little bit about on this slide, is again the construction minority outreach. That's a constant engagement. That's every day. That is, we have quite a few schools we're building, and we have lots of contractors and subcontractors that have to be a part of that, of the building process that is required by law. And so we really do work directly with our contractors to assist them in acquiring the minority firms on our projects and subcontracting. From all trades. We're there in the meetings. We attend their pre-bid meetings as well as their outreach information sessions for minority participation. So we're there. We're the face for our projects. So we're definitely engaging in that aspect. Next slide, please. So procurement. While there is not a lot of data right now in the procurement side of things, however, procurement is definitely involved in good faith efforts. They really are. They are. Recently, we've had a roundtable outreach session where we've had MWBE subcontractors, and we've had furniture suppliers and other type suppliers at our roundtables. So that is on the goods and services procurement side. So they definitely are looking and helping and being a part of the equity focus in that area, as well as, again, they attend the Small Business Expo. That Small Business Expo is an annual expo, and Pam and I are part of the planning for that with the City of Raleigh. It is a joint effort. We have probably 65 to 70 different firms out there that are looking for minority businesses, and it is well advertised. Mm-hmm. It is well advertised. We get a pretty good attendance. And we have speakers, and so the procurement office actually has a table there as well, and they are engaging with and talking with our minority businesses and informing them, as well as informing those minority businesses of opportunities in procurement. So they are there, and we also lately created an internal database which is host MWBE suppliers, which Pam has talked about previously. So the efforts are there, and we are looking to hopefully be able to, continue to work with procurement to address any other issues or any areas that we see that we could continue to grow from the goods and services side.
Before we get to the data, because I know you've got some great results to give us, I see some more interest in a couple other questions
Okay,
and
sure,
comments. If you
question.
would take a few. Mr. Swanson.
Thank you so much. I have two quick questions. As relates to the community engagement and outreach, as you all are meeting with those business leaders, I know you mentioned that you get the information to the principals, but how do we share that information with students who may be interested in, internships or programs that they can potentially use their gifts and talents to help elevate these businesses? Is that a conversation that we're having or hopefully can have?
Well, actually, yes. And I'll say that because what we have done internally, because we do have family engagement within our office, we have actually talked working with some of the leaders and the community engagement with our students and family engagements with our students to try and come and be a part of their programs and sessions. And we've actually had the opportunity to be a part of one of their programs where we introduced ourselves and told them what we do and how and talked about small businesses. And so so we're trying to do more of that internally with our family engagement program within the Office of Equity Affairs. And the great turnout of that from that day was that we found out that there was a student there who actually had a family member who is interested in working and has a small business. And since then, I have made contact with that family member to introduce them to how to work on our project here at school. So we are really engaging internally with our Office of Equity Affairs leaders who are working with students on family engagement.
And then,
just one more thing. I have also, in the past, been into schools, been invited into schools to talk about redlining and different things like that within the schools. So I've been invited a couple of times out to Apex Friendship to talk about that and to see their projects and things. So they are interested in knowing about how, they can be more equitable and how they can learn about their entrepreneurship, I would say. If that's the direction you're going.
Correct.
Yeah, to make them more aware of how they can become entrepreneurs and be successful in the minority and women-owned business realm of their entrepreneurship.
great. And then my final question is, with the database of vendors that we have, is that information shared with PTA leaders? So as different PTA leaders that are hosting different events can go to a particular, go on a database and select some of those vendors to, host different things for the schools?
I don't think that database is external. I think it's for internal departments only. So it's accessible through Wait Connect and on the procurement website. And I think Deborah Wallace has made that available to everyone. And I think in the trainings with the secretaries and things like that, that she makes them aware that is available. But they can go in and search internally on the Wait Connect site. If you go to the procurement site, it has it there that this is a listing of minority and women businesses.
Gotcha. Well, I would hope that we could hopefully get that information to different PTAs and school leaders who don't have that access to Wait Connect, so they can push that.
Yeah, well, the hub database, the state hub database is accessible, of course, to everybody in the state. So that is one place to search. But we are also working on another system that would be, something that would be able to have internal and external access.
That would be great. Thank you.
All right, next I have Ms. Caulfield.
Well, actually, Mr. Swanson asked my question. I was going to ask what the opportunities were for the students, like volunteer hours and intern, and just basically how it could guide them. And did the students have access to, is there any place on our website that they could look things up like that to join? Like, I know that they can go on and they can find clubs and stuff like that within their school. Is there anything that they can do that would direct them towards these opportunities?
I don't think so. I did have one young lady who started her business during the pandemic. I can't remember off the top of my head what high school she was with, but we interacted with her quite often, talking about how she actually invited me to one of her business meetings, so I could see how things were going. So I know that they are out there and they are entrepreneurial, but I don't know if they know how to, she was actually a minority business, but she was trying to grow her business, and somehow someone had connected her to me, and she sent me an email. But I think that's an opportunity that as we grow, we can look more into, talking to students about, their entrepreneurial aspects of their businesses that I know a lot of them have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it might be something that we think about adding to our website. There's parent links and there's student links, but sometimes when you go on there, I know the data, you have to have somebody volunteer to put all that information in, but it might be helpful to have a tab, and I don't know how it would look, that student opportunities could be in there. And perhaps that could be something student body could take care of, where they post opportunities for students or businesses they want to start. I mean, there's plenty of high school kids out there
Yes,
making
they
tons of
have.
money doing some smart stuff.
Yes.
So
I
to
agree.
have a button that they could click on and just kind of figure out how they could connect with communities, or just within their community through the PTA, whichever. Thank you.
I think also, Ms. Caulfield, we've had some general conversations about exactly what you and Mr. Swanson has posed as questions, right? I think there's opportunity there for us also to engage with our CTE department, especially because they offer workforce type and base classes, entrepreneurial type classes that we could probably engage and have them interact with our department, think about what that looks like, the scope of this work, the metrics that are associated with that. So I think now we have some energy around moving the discussion more to like what that could look like as a next level opportunity. Yep.
And if I could just follow up with that one, one more.
All right.
It might be good for the communities to be able to post out into them. Like, we have like Wake Forest community page, there's Nightdale community pages, all these different pages. And if they have a quick link, it might also just keep reminding them, oh, wait, I forgot the students could also get involved even when they just need spare help. And that could also trigger them to be interested in a particular field. So.
Yes.
All right. And finally, Mr. Hershey.
Thank you. As great minds think alike, Mr. Swanson brought up PTA, so I really appreciate that. Do we have conversations with them at all about this?
PTA?
Yep.
No, we don't.
No, I haven't been a part of the
PTA.
PTA in, at all.
Because I know
Would be good
PTAs
to
will
be happy to
do a lot of
share.
hiring, spend a lot of money at schools, do a lot for our staff, I would encourage us to either we do it through Wake PTA or directly with them, but they certainly have resources and they will spend them on small businesses. As it pertains to the database, you said it's just the MWBE right now?
Well, that was the sole purpose, is the minority and women-owned businesses that they go and search for. Only because that database was never created. They were intertwined with all the other vendors, and so in order to make it easy, like the state hub website, you go out there and you search for your minority businesses. I think that was the same thing around that, but yes, there are only minority and women-owned businesses in that internal database.
Okay, I got you. When you go to, like the city of Raleigh, I'm sorry, I'm looking for the slide, and the expos, how far are businesses coming from to attend these?
I would say Well, yeah, they come from
Okay.
Virginia, they come from Charlotte, they come from all over the state of North Carolina, and definitely Virginia, and even some from South Carolina. I have met some that come up here from out South Carolina. We advertise on the radio, and this year actually is our 25th anniversary, and so we're going to be holding it at the McKimmon Center
Nice.
in June. So it's going to be a bigger, event, and so, I would like to invite, everyone to come out to that when we, do have that. But you'll see the advertisement, and it'll come out internally and externally.
Just don't do it during graduations. I'm assuming other school districts do this as well? Or maybe not?
Other school districts do hold outreaches and events and things like that.
But by state
Yes.
law, they have to do this
Yes,
work?
yes, by
Do-
state law, they have to do that. What we're doing with the expo and joining forces with the city of Raleigh is combining our resources
Right.
and making it big for the whole Raleigh area.
Well, I was going to ask if other municipalities do that as well, but do we ever examine what other contracts are being signed in other school districts around here in case they have information on a minority-owned business that we could kind of poach?
Oh, of course, yes.
Okay.
We work with Durham County, Durham Public Schools,
That's what I was wondering.
Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools, it's not too much with Johnston County, but mainly the larger school districts that we
Got it.
have. We're in this, like she said, the coordinators network, MWBA coordinators network, and we share knowledge with everyone. And also, we're part of the North Carolina Association of Governmental Purchasing, which we share information with them also. So they, in turn, give us information about vendor things that they have going on also.
Thank you very much.
All right, so I know you've compiled some wonderful data for us. Let's take a look and see what you got.
We have our next slide. There you go. All right, so this data is our overall total minority business enterprises participation over a 5-year span here. So currently, Wake County Public, well, let me just say that Wake County, the two entities that are being compared here, which is Wake County Public School Systems and Wake Tech, and the reason for that is because of the funding source, and we are funded by Wake County government. So that's why we are comparing the two entities. So of course, in 29, right now, where Wake County Public School System stands for our minority participation is right around 24%. Our goal, the standard goal is 10%. Right, so we are definitely exceeding that goal and working to even continue to increase that goal. Surely in 2019, the goal there was higher for Wake County Public School System. This was prior to COVID. COVID hit. Once COVID hit, with all the variables that are intertwined in there, surely the minority participation dropped some. However, construction never stops, right? So we continue to do as much efforts as we possibly could, either virtually or not face-to-face, somehow. So we continue to push forward. And if you can see there, Wake Tech back in 2019 was a lot lower than us. Now, let me just say that Wake Technical College, they do not have as many projects as we do. They just don't do as much work as we do. So it can appear that there, in some of these years, as you can see back in 2022, their numbers appear a little higher than ours during that time, but we had more work. Theirs could be off of one project versus many, right? So, but again, we stand now neck and neck, very close or in line with one another for now. And as of 2023, we're both right around that 24%. So again, that is with continued efforts across the board, and we'll look to even increase that. And again, just to say that much of this data is done, much of it or majority of it is manual. It's a lot of, but we do it well in that we have systems. Our system and documents and templates that we require our contractors to use and complete to ensure that we are capturing all the data that is required and that we need to capture to ensure that our reporting is accurate within our different categories. So here's where we stand now with our data. And I'll open, are there any questions about the data portion of how we engage?
Vice Chair Waters.
Yes.
I was wondering if you could speak more to the manual part of it.
Sure.
Is there a need for a software implementation? Can you just help us understand?
Yes. So both Pam and I will talk to that. You want to start?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll let Pam start and Gay.
Well, we have been in talks with both departments, facilities, and the Department of Equity Affairs to acquire a vendor management system, which would we would be able to capture data and reports in all different, kinds of ways by the data being put in. This vendor management system would be able to give us some quality reports that we would be able to present to the board. If you had a question, we could, type it in and, say, hey, well, we've done this year. So it would not be a manual process by Excel, death by Excel. I'll call it that. But, yes. But we're looking forward to that, and we're in talks, with that portion of our program in being able to do that and get away from the manual process.
When you say in talks,
It hasn't been approved.
Well, let's say this, we've had the opportunity to have one of the software companies to come and present. We've shared that, two actually, and we've actually, so that's very recent, very recent. So we're still in the process of now we now know what we need, and the people that need to know what we need now know exactly what we need. And so now we are at a point where we can talk about less now choosing and moving forward with selecting the database so we can go ahead and put that into place, because and we report annually. We gather this data and this as of the end of June 30th. So we are now starting to gather data as we complete our projects, or in the pre-construction phase of our projects. We are gathering data as we go. So it's not a one-time trying to track this data, but it is pretty manual. But we are, I must say that we've had quite a bit of a good contact with the right people to at least let them know what we need to move forward, and we're working on that now. So it's on its way.
Okay, well, it's on all of our radars now.
It's on its way. It's on its way.
And just, if I may, one more question. So you mentioned Wake Tech more in the talks of the numbers, but have you done any collaboration? Because a lot of it is the learning how to be involved in this, and so Wake Tech is a provider of a lot of different courses and trainings. Have you had any conversations or thoughts around maybe doing some training or hands-on right here in the computer lab? We can get you prepared to move forward today. Anything like that?
Great question. I have actually worked with Wake Tech for the past 4 years to do a contractor's college. So I go in and I teach a course in the evening in this contractor's college about RFPs, IFBs, and construction contracting with a group of suppliers, contractors. They pay to attend this course, and they come in the evening, and I think we do it like every year in the spring, and so I've done that the past 3 years I've been invited in. I've also been invited by the Hub Office to present to vendors, especially during the pandemic. talk to them about how, to do contracting and how to get opportunities with governments, not just Wake County Public Schools, but all government entities. And because it is a special niche that that we are different from corporate. So it's a way, an opportunity for them to learn through that contractors college and also through the hub office offering these courses also. And then the Hispanic Contractors Association of North Carolina also teaches courses for the Hispanic contractors, and they have invited us in to teach classes with them.
All right. Next, Dr. Ng.
Hi, thank you. Did you say death by Excel?
But I love Excel.
It's a very slow and painful death.
It can be. It can be. It can be, but I love it. I love Excel.
But speaking of the data, is there a further categorization in the data regarding the subgroups of the minority, under minority, meaning like, Black, Hispanic, Asian American, American Indian, things like that?
Yes, absolutely. So we maintain data on that as well. As we are gathering our data, we also gather data based on category, because we want to be able to break it all down to see what categories we probably need to focus on even more and share with our contractors. What do we need to do to help you, fill in this gap? So yes, we do maintain data as far as down as category. Yeah, we do.
And the report from Wake County has it broken down by that, but we didn't want to have too many slides. So we went with the main data, but I can provide that to you if you would like, the whole report.
That would be great.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's important for us to reach out to all the groups that some of them don't even know this process exists, and be able to be able to access this opportunities as well.
Yes, and that report breaks it down by the categories and how much spend we have in each category for each minority group.
All right, and Mr. Hershey.
Just to follow up on Vice Chair Waters, just so I'm crystal clear, I'm very happy she asked her follow-up about like, yes, you are definitely going to get this software. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. I thought you said yes, but I just wanted to make sure there's no roadblocks. All right, thank you.
All right, Sean Gale, bring us home.
All right, thank you. I'll turn it over to Pam at this time. Thanks.
Okay, we're going to skip through these next slides next. Even though we do cover all of those areas, we didn't want to do a deep dive into that today. But I would like to go to next steps for Supplier Diversity and Inclusion Program. Okay, so our next steps, of course, is to implement a vendor database for potential suppliers and vendors to access and be accessible to all staff and external people. So that was coming up. And also, we want to communicate the value of our program by conducting a gap analysis and to help and an economic impact analysis. So I think the gap analysis will be able to help us know. We're going to probably choose 5 departments that have high dollar spend, and just see where we're at with in those departments with their spending, and how we can know what we're doing with internally. And then externally, an economic impact analysis, just to see how Wake County Public Schools, because we're such a large entity, how our buying and our spending affect the community around us. So I think that'll be something that is down the road, but it's something that I definitely think is needed for next steps in the Supplier Diversity Program. And then create and implement training programs for diverse vendors and suppliers to help their business grow, which speaks to some of the questions that we were having with the students and their businesses, and also with, just the businesses in our that are in our community. And we want to convey that the supplier diversity goals and processes and expectations of the prime contractors that can support the MWB subcontractor spend are very important. We want to make sure that gets across in our program, and incorporate the supplier diversity and inclusion focus across all departments, not just in procurement and facilities, but in all departments at Wake County Public Schools, because it touches every department. Every department does contracts. So I think there's opportunity there. And then include additional supplier diversity staff within the Office of Equity Affairs, because it's going to take more people to get the work done, because procurement, is a whole area that definitely could have one person focus on that. Of course, we have Ms. Sean Birch-Crispin that focuses on the construction now, while overall, my position is trying to get the message out there and communicate with leadership and the community that Wake County Public Schools is open for business. Next slide. Okay. This is also very important to show you that over time, as Dr. Chavis has said, we're trying to become this world-class program. Right now, we are in between the traditional program and an advanced program. But I know we can get to the world-class program, which would have that vendor management system, which would have the students being able to learn about entrepreneurship and business practices, which would have our community being able to come and know that they are able to have opportunities here by just being able to enter not just entering their information into a database, but being able to know that they are welcome, and we are doing diversity in contracting here. It's not just, one-sided or across the board, because I know as leaders in the community, you hear this all the time, and so I just want to make sure that our program is to the world-class status, where people are saying, oh yeah, if you go to Wake County Public Schools, you're going to be able to have an opportunity there to, at least get your business, heard from or talked to or learn, something about how to do business with Wake County Public Schools. And with that, any questions?
Any final questions for our team? Ms. Johnson-Hostler?
So you talked about world-class, thank you. And again, I will also say I think we can tell how far we've come since the last time you sat before us, so I'm excited to hear that. How many staff would make you world-class?
Well, the assessment did speak to at least 3 additional staff members, not including myself.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be, 4. Because there's reporting that also has to be done to the state, which is a whole position within itself. Then with the construction side, and then with the procurement side, and then with the whole supplier diversity program, as my position has been elevated to making sure that it's run the proper way.
Well, I will just say congratulations. You have been the single sole source person for as long as I've been on this board. So clearly we knew that you needed more than one person, but I had not heard articulated how many, and I did not ask that question last time we had the conversation. So it was the only thing that was kind of percolating is the number of staff you thought it would take to make you world-class. And I'm definitely glad to hear that having your position elevated is also helping across the district.
Yes.
Because again, as we talked last time, we are buying in every facet of this district, all the way down to, as Mr. Swanson and I talked about, our PTA are buying a lot. So thank you for answering the question, and again, congratulations. I'm glad you at least have some support.
Thank you. Dr. Chavis worked hard.
All right, then.
Thank you, Dr. Chavis.
Say, Dr. Chavis, Director Gales, Ms. Birch-Crispin, thank you so much for putting this presentation together. I think you saw we had a lot of questions. You anticipated the questions.
Yes.
We just asked them before we got to them in the slides.
Yes.
So great. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
All right, so board members, what I'd like to ask for you is that because we are a bit ahead of our schedule, I'd like at this point to entertain a motion that we go into closed session. We have a motion from Mr. Swanson. I heard a second from Mr. Hershey. And this is, for the record, to consult with an attorney, the board education attorney, and preserve the attorney-client privileges provided for under General Statute 143-318-11A3 due to current litigation, LM by and through as parent KM and MM versus Wake County Board of Education, case 23, Eastern District Court 04469 in the North Carolina Office of Administrative Hearings. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we'll now move into closed session. We'll give a minute for the room to transition. Mr. Malone, should we take this in here, or should we take this in the board conference room? All right, then we will end the recording and we'll move to the conference room. Thank you, everybody.